live on the corner. Good evening, everyone. Hey, thanks for joining us. This is Gina with Rise Up from Trauma Coaching. And on this episode of Healing Strategies, we have Jenn Fisher. And Jenn is a travel blog for self-healing. She solo travels. And what's amazing about her journey is that she has learned to heal herself from any of the triggers that trauma has caused. And so I'm very honored and truly blessed to have her joining us this evening. So welcome, Jenn.
Thanks, Gina. I'm happy to be here.
You are more than welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me on the show. I discovered solo travel not right away. I'm a very late comer to travel. I didn't even have a passport until I was in my 40s. But I think solo travel was born from falling in love with being alone. And then from there was being alone hiking, solo hiking, and then it led up to solo traveling. I didn't at all ever set out to be a solo travel blogger. Though I always wanted to be a writer. That's not the, that I had no idea that that's where I would end up.
Isn't it kind of amazing? Not amazing in a bad way. I mean, I know we've gone through, trauma. Trauma's trauma. And but isn't it amazing kind of when we go through these challenging times, how that's why we do this, because everybody heals differently. Nobody heals at the same rate. And everybody has a different way that they heal. And so that's why I think I was so fascinated when I met you that, the traveling, the solo traveling is something that I was like, oh, I don't know how she does it. But look, I was reading your stuff on your website and some of the things, and it's so knowledgeable. And I think just getting out there in nature. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, 100%. Nature, of course, that's at the top of the list in terms of healing modalities. I would have to say, I kind of got stuck on when you said there's so many different ways to heal, because even solo travel is just one of a multitude, of strategies that I use. And that's what I was so fascinated with our conversation. I was so passionate, the conversation that we had. I got very excited when you said that it is your mission to reach people who aren't necessarily traditional therapy, practitioners. And I have used traditional therapy, but I do think that putting the responsibility for healing in anybody else's hands is going to be a big red flag for what I've learned for self-healing. And, the irony is that the therapist that I had, that I did gain a lot of ground with and a lot of healing, that was probably the most important number one thing she taught me was it's up to me. Healing's in my hands. I'm not sure if a lot of therapists do that. I don't know. That's just another conversation or topic. But yeah, so getting out onto hiking trails by myself in nature was really in the beginning. It was actually an attempt to try to calm me down, like calm me the fuck down, because my head and my emotions were really off the charts at that time in my life. I had hiked my whole life, but with my story, I left my loving but codependent marriage due to a lot of repressed and dead-end ways to try to heal together. We couldn't heal together. It was like we were addicted to not abandoning each other. We would abandon ourselves before we would even think about abandoning each other. And we were both drowning, to try to save the other one. And after about 10 years of trying to sort that out, I was the one that left. And 3 children. One was pretty much at adulthood. My other two were fifth and fourth grade. So at that point, I hit a very, very painful bottom. And that's what I brought to the hiking trails, that condition. I felt like I was emotionally bleeding out. Um, and I started to notice that the trails would calm me. They would center me. I would be able to breathe, you know. It was regulating my system, even though I didn't really know anything. But I did have enough understanding to know I felt better. After hiking alone, I could start. I think when I first started hiking for the first year after I left my marriage, probably for the first half an hour, 45 minutes of a hike, it was just my head telling off everybody in my life, and like it was just screaming. So
Yes.
yeah, I can laugh at it now, but
Yeah.
it was
I,
redoing every confrontation.
yes.
This is what I'm going to say to them next time, and because it was everybody else.
Yes.
So I didn't have the recovery at that point. It was everybody. Everything was focused outward. But then after about 45 minutes of dumping all of my mental anguish into Mother Nature, who was very healing and loving and compassionate, that's when I was opening myself up for space to heal. And and then it would balance out, like instead of it taking 45 minutes, it would be maybe 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Maybe I wouldn't even, at the end, I wouldn't even have to go to the woods to dump. I could just walk. I could enter the forest perfectly emotionally balanced.
I'm just amazed. I mean, well, I can't say I'm amazed. I mean, I am amazed, but some people don't even know, or maybe not even have heard of ecotherapy. And so I heard of ecotherapy years and years and years ago. So exactly what you're feeling from the forest and from the trees and from the ground and everything is exactly what ecotherapy is meant to do. And it's just the ions and all of the energy that all the positive energy being around you is literally it's taking out all of that negative.
Mm.
And so when you were in the forest, did you scream? Did you sit with your feelings? Like, I'm kind of like, whatever you want to share, but are those the types of things that you did when you went in there?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for introducing that term to me, and I'd never heard of it. So I'm one
Okay.
of those people who never heard of it.
You're welcome.
Sing it, and I had enough understanding about ions and energy. I went a little bit more holistic.
Okay.
Spirits, nature spirits. I definitely felt love, and just soft, loving energy, surrounding me. No, I never screamed. I don't know. I think if I would want to, I wouldn't want to startle the deer or the birds, I mean, I guess if I had to, I would, but that didn't happen. I would when I would hike, I would be definitely exhausting myself physically. That was
Okay.
definitely a modality I used to make myself tired, because it used up what was inside of me that needed to be released.
Yes.
That was a physical release, just like crying. Crying was definitely
Yes.
a physical release too.
Yes.
But when I would get so tired and be time to have my little snack, whether I packed a sandwich or whatever, I would always sit on a rock and put my hands on the rock or the ground for sure. If there was a place to sit next to water, I would sit and feel the water in my hands and this sand. It's very important for me to do that. That grounded me to inner child. I've done a lot of inner child work, but I discovered quickly that being in the forest was extremely healing to many inner children, not just young, but also older, from early exposure to camping with my family as a child, though it was very dysfunctional and probably scary because they had a lot of dysfunction and there was a lot of out of control behavior from those adults and trauma. I don't really remember that trauma. I know it was there. There's some I remember. That's probably not true. Some trauma I remember because I couldn't forget it. But there was a lot of quiet moments. Putting my hands in the lake water, and digging, and also mindfulness of looking at the bugs at my feet while I was
Yep.
eating my lunch. So there's just a lot of connecting. And I would always, leave feeling so much better.
I love that. Yeah. And that's, again, to reiterate, that's exactly why I do this, is because there's so many different healing modalities that people don't even know exist, or they may have heard of it, but they're like, oh, I have no idea how to get started in that or anything like that. And so it is, I mean, especially sitting out and, wiggling your toes or having your hands in, in everything, and being mindful. And so that's one of the biggest things when it comes to recovery, is being mindful of what's going on in your body. Where are you feeling it? And when you're using your hands and you're using your feet, you're literally diverting that energy into whatever you're doing, and you're diverting your attention back into whatever you're doing. And so then what you're doing is you're taking those negative thoughts or whatever's happening in your body, as you know, and literally, like I said, diverting it elsewhere. And so that's where a lot of the healing comes from. And then, for people to understand, when you said hiking, I'd like to kind of back up so that I can let my audience know. But for hiking, the reason that hiking and exhausting yourself, it's because we talk about this week after week, is that the trauma stays in the physiological portion of things in your system. And so by getting out there and exhausting yourself, or getting out there and moving, whether it's, hiking, walking, swimming, whatever you're doing, by doing that, you're excreting all of that trapped trauma in the physiological portions of your system, and you're working it out. So as you work it out, there'll be less anxiety, or, after effects as far as anxiety, mood swings. Maybe you'll feel happier, more euphoric. Those are the types of things that we're trying to get people to understand, especially out in, I love nature. Like, I have not hiked, but after, I'm just like, maybe I should go hiking and I should do this. I do love being outside. Outside is one of the biggest things. I used to spend probably 10, 12 hours outside. I love being outside. I love walking without my shoes until I got stung by a bee. So, but I think, I'm going to take some of your advice. So that's, I'm listening and absorbing, because there's so many things that I'm like, I'm going to try this. I love nature, and I want to be able to go and do things, and sit and absorb all of that energy, and just, and I like to try things too. And, and eventually maybe get into traveling someplace by myself, or anything like that. So we'll see. But we do have some hiking trails, and they're just like not hiking up a hill, just like through like a little wood forest and all that stuff. But it's a start anyway.
It
Something
really
local.
is. Yeah, there's so much that you sparked in me. First, I'll start the hiking, then I'll work back to snorkeling.
Woo.
I just got back from England a couple of days ago, and I I don't do as much hiking as I used to. At least not in the summer in New Jersey. It's hot. That's my excuse. But I went to this nature reserve in England, and just spending time, now that I'm on my healing journey, just spending time alone is rejuvenating. Spending time alone solo traveling is like over the moon. I'm like, yay. I just get so excited, going to the airport, and like, it's my time, it's for me. I can meet all of my needs and hear all of my inner wants, and I come first. And when I was in England, I didn't stay in a rural area, and I was not necessarily surrounded by nature like I'm used to. But I did go on this one hike at this nature reserve, and I was in Cornwall, and I was only in this like forest. It was right, like it wasn't a deep, you know, like off the beat. Like the parking lot was only, quarter mile, less than
Mm-hmm.
that. But being around those trees, they were like, I felt like I was in Nottingham Forest. Isn't that where Robin Hood was? I mean, it was so picturesque. Like the moss was all over the trees, and I've seen so many beautiful places in the world. I've been to most national parks in America, and I don't need to travel to be wowed. But in that 10 or 15 minutes, it brought me right back, Gina. I was like, yeah, hiking. Like, I have been neglecting hiking, because I think that I'm a very blessed person, that I am so able to receive from nature and so quickly, So when I was I could feel it right away. I'm also an empath. I could feel it. I was like, and all of a sudden it all came back with like my soul feeling very empowered, like all you got to do is open up to the energy, Jen. It's right here, like that's what I could feel, like all of these beautiful trees, like giving me, like, we're here, take it, it's free, you know. Um, we have a unconditional supply of positive, if you want to call them ions, whatever you want to call them. Um, so go take that hike.
I will. I will.
And do
Even
it
if
by yourself, just to be able to, like, that's what I think it is about hiking alone, is that being able to, not just be talking or like, looking at your phone, but to just like look around and be present in the moment. Like it really is very powerful. Again, like I have tons and tons of posts and I've done this for years. And just last week I was like, oh yeah, I need to still do this. This is still extremely powerful and relevant to me.
yes.
But yeah, so then, I just wanted to quickly mention that swimming with the body and the physiology, I think that swimming is amazing for a trauma survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I tried snorkeling, and even that was just very powerful, to
Was it?
hear your breath and to be in touch with your body so intimately, and to be held by the water. Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, that's huge. Michael's got a question. He wants to know, what is your favorite place to visit?
Oh gosh, it's like asking, a mother who's her favorite child. Because
I get asked that every day.
I know, there's so many different things to love about so many different places.
Yes.
I do love England. If it's abroad, I do love England. I don't know what it is. I've been to Ireland and Portugal, and just something about the people, I would say, and the way that their transportation system is. I love riding the trains. That's also an inner child thing. Like we love to get on the train
Yep.
and look out the window. In the U.S., I love the Americas. Our Southwest. Arizona, Nevada. I like to take trips out there in a camper van, and I love the simplicity of just sleeping in a van. And it's very beautiful and warm. So, yeah, those would be my two answers.
Wonderful. So have you been to all the states?
No, I haven't been to all the states.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I counted. Some states I visited more than once, but I probably have been to over half.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. I want to back up a little bit and go back to when you mentioned codependency. Can you explain, although I know what it is, but people and our guests may not understand what it is. And then I have another question to back it up. But can you explain what codependency is?
Well, my brand of codependency. um, Honestly, I definitely was groomed to be codependent from a very, very, very young age, toddler. And I was taught that it's my job to make everybody happy and be cute. That's what I do, be
Yep.
very cute. It was very disarming, any way to defend myself against being abused was, stripped from me because
Mm-hmm.
I thought that those very important ways to get love is to take care of everybody else's feelings first.
Right.
And then as I got older, I got better at it. So now I wasn't just smiling, even though I was still fawning, because I grew up in a very abusive and unsafe place for a young girl to be growing up in. And I still needed to fawn to survive. But then I also was able to take care of my mom, for sure, her emotional needs, and so as I got older, and I didn't know I was suffering from codependency. That's just who I was. It was very ingrained in me. It was like ran through my veins. So I brought all of that to my relationships, and I never thought of it before. I'm just thinking of it right now. It's almost like codependency teaches you to really hate yourself. Like let that sink in. Like
Mm-hmm.
out of all the things that people are like, oh yeah, codependency. Well, honestly, I personally think that we live in a very codependent society. I think most people are codependent. More people are than are.
Yes.
And changing codependency, I see why people don't do it, because you
Right.
have to throw out your entire identity, and it's miserable to do, but it's worth it, so do it. However, I think it teaches you to hate yourself. I think codependency teaches you to hate yourself, because for me, I needed to make everybody else happy, and I knew that that was more important than making myself happy. And when I say happy, I mean just accepting myself.
Yes. Yes.
So I had to make everyone outside of me be okay. So on a daily basis, it was like their needs are more important than yours, Jen. You are a loser,
Right.
and so like it played out in every single relationship that I had. And ultimately, that is what I concluded, was that, well, what's the point? I'll just go, go on to the bitter end, pretending I'm happy,
Right. Right.
because it's easier, and it's not.
It's not. Nope. It's really where you're, relying upon somebody else for what is it, emotional and psychological, and so it's really looking for somebody else kind of like, I guess, somebody else to take care of you in a sense. You become dependent upon them,
Mhm.
and then you become codependent upon each other. And
Yep.
so you, exactly what you said, you do. It's a form of you do. It's like kind of like self-sabotaging. You end up not liking yourself and putting yourself last and everybody else first, and learning, and then once you finally figure out, oh my goodness, what am I doing? It's a lot of learning to put yourself first. What is learning to love yourself? And it's like, holy mackerel. And so many trauma survivors struggle with love, like self-love, self-respect. So many of them struggle with that. And I think a lot of them, because we didn't have that growing up, a lot of the nurturing, the love, the caring, and all that, there's so many people or so many trauma survivors that didn't have that. So then they grew up to be codependent.
For
And
sure.
it's like, oof, it's like, oh yeah. So then I have another question backing off of, kind of piggybacking off of that question. When you first started hiking or going into the forest, to kind of sit, did you have a huge resistance?
Um, resistance to sitting still.
Yes. So yeah, in a way, yes. But okay, let me rephrase it. Yes, to sitting still. But when you found like the codependency, and then I remember that you said you separated from your husband, and then you went on this. How was the resistance when you started doing, whether it was hiking or getting into um, camping or your solo traveling? Was there a huge resistance because your body was used to that?
Definitely. So the way that I described most of my codependency was probably, you know, if you break it down into like developmental stages, that was
Yeah.
my codependency up until I
Okay.
left my marriage. So that was my family of origin, that was my marriage, that was my children. So then my codependency leveled up, and it transferred to a whole new breed. And now it went pretty much focused on another partner that ended up being a lot of a trauma bond. Um, and then that was still codependency, but like the many faces of codependency, it could be like the title of a book. Um, Now it was like, I am not going to be nice anymore. I'm sick of being nice. Now my codependency was a little more desperate, but also a little more overtly expressed instead of covertly. Yeah, because, I'm a master of both. So thank God I've put all of those tools away. And
Yes.
need to use them to get my wants and needs met anymore. But oh yeah, I mastered it. So then in the next phase, it was it became like a more sophisticated, almost like an adult female codependent, like not like the mother and good wife, but like the girlfriend, almost like bitch.
Yes.
So that was another, phase of my life, and it that turmoil, that constant turmoil, that's when I just kind of ran to the woods, and it was not as hard because now I was living alone, and my kids were going back to their father half the time, and I was just with me. And the person that I picked for my life as a partner after the separation was somebody that was completely emotionally unavailable, which I would say I did on purpose to force me to grow the
Right.
fuck up, And
Right.
now I fell flat on my face because I picked somebody who was not going to be there for me. Now I had to now I had to face the rage of, I'm going to just turn the light on in my room.
Okay.
I didn't realize the sun was going down.
It's all right.
Now I
I
had
know.
to face the rage of being abandoned as a kid and being abused as a kid.
Oh,
Because
yes.
now, like in time, I loosened my death grip on that person. That didn't have to do with that person. It was my parents. And so I wrestled with that for a lot of years. And and for the most part, I figured it out eventually that that's what was happening. But I think that it was like a hiking and going to the woods. That was just my medicine, and I didn't really think it through. I just knew, my kids aren't here. I was staying in a rental that was furnished, so I didn't have like compulsive cleaning to act out on. And I picked somebody who's not going to be there for me, so I'm left with me. So I had the hikes,
Yes.
and I had other modalities. Like eventually I bought a house on 2.5 acres, which was a lot of fun. Um, Scary for different reasons, but so then I took my energy out on my yard, and I did like a lot of work. See, because nature, like you and I were saying, like just being in nature, and I would go out and I would you know, um, work in my yard. It felt really good. So now, like, I had something that I would look out my window and be like, hey, I planted those 13 trees, you know, I mowed those 2.5 acres. So it evolved. And, you know, whether it was hiking or many, many, many other things, now I'm able to spend time alone and create my own life away from taking care of everybody else and making them take care of me, which is like hostage holding.
I love that. Yeah. Building mindfulness, that's a huge thing. That's a huge step, is building mindfulness, and then being appreciative to yourself and showing yourself that gratitude of, look at the things that I'm accomplishing. You
Definitely.
know, yeah, I mean, you know, look at all the trees you planted. You know, look at the grass that you mowed. People would be like, yeah, you know, she's crazy. But that's the beauty of being outdoors, that some people, if you've never experienced it, you know, we, like I said, we have some fishing people on here, so they understand being out in the outdoors. But being out in the outdoors and then seeing the things that you've accomplished, it's just, it gives you this kind of, it just fills you up with such gratitude, knowing you had a hand in that. You know, and really, just building something or making something, or had, you know, anything like that, and just to kind of watch it. Um, so Fly Fox has a question too. Here, I'll put it up on the board so everybody can see it too. It says, what is your favorite thing to enjoy while out hiking?
It's kind of a tie between hearing the birds and listening to the wind through the trees. Just very simple, you know. I just have so much gratitude for the trees, you know. Um, I I can't say what I'm getting. It's not quantifiable, but just, I guess, like a pure love. So
Yes,
just absorbing all of that. That's my favorite thing.
I love that. I'm going to look it up because I might not be able to figure it out, but I used to know it, but I don't remember what it is. Oh well, I'll look it up out. But the trees do emit um, something. I mean, it's something calming. And I used to laugh at tree huggers. And I have a friend that she's still a tree hugger, and I would laugh, and I'm like, this lady's like, she's crazy. And I would just giggle with her. And then when I started learning about ecotherapy, I started learning about the energy that, you know, the ground produces and the trees produce. And so that's why a lot of people that have excessive nervousness or anything like that, it's wonderful for them to sit in nature. And
Yeah.
so she would go to different parks, and she would just kind of tree hug, and she would and I would just kind of giggle. And then, like I said, I started reading about ecotherapy and the energy that trees emit. And so, you know, I just love that. And then, you know, and then using more of the mindfulness, coming in and saying, um, I love listening, you know, to the birds, or, you know, the wind blowing in. And so it's really directing. And this is huge. And I'm gonna say this, but this is huge for people that have, um, absolutely, it's good for grounding. My husband said grounding, but it's huge for grounding. And so what it's doing is it's placing you in this peaceful place. But people that have a lot of negative thoughts, negative thinking, and actually what I love about it is it's a lot of mind shifting. So because that's how we get a lot of mind shifting is by the mindfulness. What are you hearing when you have a negative thought? What are you seeing? How, you know, what out are you seeing? And you know, and then coming back with something different. When you divert your attention to something else, it changes who you are. And so being in nature has so many wonderful attributes to it that I don't think people. So anybody on here, you guys need to go hiking. You need to go do something. Get out in nature. It's huge. It really is. So Linda has a question. She would like to know, what was your first solo trip abroad?
Ireland.
Ireland.
Ireland, and it was somewhat of a ancestral
Okay.
healing for generational trauma, for
Okay.
sure. Um, And, you know, I did do ancestral research. And when I got over there, first I went to Dublin, and then I took a 3-hour public transportation bus to Donegal. Americans say Donegal, but if you want to say it correctly, it's Donegal. And it's called the Wild Atlantic Way, and it is breathtakingly beautiful. Sea
Wow.
cliffs and sheep, and you know, it just I was so excited as I approached that part of Ireland. When I was on the bus, I started getting really excited, and I felt like I was home. And then the people were so warm-hearted. The people in Ireland are so kind, and it did heal me a lot on an ancestral line level. I'm very open to, obviously, however healing wants to come to me. And visiting Ireland, you know, only knowing a lot of, like my dad used to say, you know, we come from, you know, our tree is like alcoholics and fishermen and horse thieves, you know, like just, and it was true. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes, and alcoholism was rampant in my family. And, you know, it's, Ireland is known for drinking. You know, I became an alcoholic myself. I'm in recovery now. But, you know, going to that land and then learning about the history when I was there, it was very healing. It just came in and like softened my heart. And it's such a beautiful country. So
Wonderful.
go. I mean, it might rain a lot, but that's okay. It stops.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Scott said that, I forgot to say, he said you might enjoy Vermont. Have you been to Vermont before?
Like 100 times.
I was
Yes.
going to say, you're on the East Coast. I don't know if you heard where you were from.
Hop, skip, and a
So,
jump. Yeah.
yeah,
Vermont is probably, you know, it's probably my favorite state. You know, it's probably, you know, the closest I've come to like having a second home. I know the winters are kind of crazy, but yeah, Vermont is very special. Very special.
yep. Yep.
Definitely not love Vermont.
I know.
Especially
I've never been
hiking.
there.
I mean, there's
Yes.
the long trail. I think at last count I probably have stayed in maybe 15 to 20 state parks in Vermont.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have a very extensive state park system. You should check it out. They're great. They're great.
Oh, he's trying to always get my husband and I to come up there.
Oh, you
Like,
gotta
oh,
go.
you should come. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Now, you know,
Yeah.
when I am in Ireland, you know, and there are parts of England that remind me of it, it's very, very green. So if you go to Vermont, yeah, there's a lot of just there's a lot of nature because it's a lot of undeveloped space. So
Okay.
I think it's an excellent place to go for healing.
Oh, nice. That would be nice. That would be
Mhm.
nice. Yeah, he said, yes, come to Vermont. You got to work on Charles on that one.
The summers are great. I mean,
Yes.
can't beat their summers. I've spent a lot of
Yeah.
summers in Vermont.
I'm just staying away from the winters. I know he tells us he's got some harsh winters. I was like, yeah, nope, ain't going there.
Maybe
So
maybe southern Vermont. You
yes,
could do that like right inside on the other side of New York.
I know here in Ohio, sometimes we have brutal winters, and I grew up in Massachusetts and they had some kind of harsh winters as well. And so, yeah, I'm just like, yeah, maybe, yeah, I'm like, I don't know about all that stuff. So we'll see. I don't like the cold, but I'm not ready to move out west or down south. I'll just handle my cold. I've figured, well, I've dealt with this long. Yeah, it's all right. What's a little longer? So, I have some other questions for you. The after effects of trauma, do you feel comfortable discussing some of them?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Just because I know that there's some of our listeners and stuff that may have like anxiety or chronic pain, maybe depression. Maybe they're learning now. They just found out maybe they are codependent. if you'll share some of the after effects that you had and how solo travel really helped you.
So I kind of white knuckled a lot through my mental health issues. So for my personal story, I was in, double digits recovery from alcoholism. So it's like, well, what's wrong with me? I should be fine, because I do work a recovery program for that. So it was like my trauma came up and hit me in the face after I left my marriage. And I discovered, probably like in the worst way that anybody would want to discover, that they have PTSD. It was kind of like being thrown into it and being like, what is wrong with me? Something's wrong with me.
Right.
So, I haven't necessarily experienced panic attacks, but there are times where I would be facing abandonment with that, relationship that I mentioned, that it was absolute terror. Pacing the floor, wringing my hands. During that time, I would cry in the closet because that's where I felt safe. I would close myself in my closet and, put my back against the wall in a small space, and that helped soothe me through the moments that it would come on fast and furious. When I lived on 2.5 acres in that home, a lot of times I was alone. Even if, I was the only adult in the house. And so I would check and recheck locks. At one point, it was kind of a funny story. A raccoon tried to come into the house, but like literally, like its paw, like it was in like labor or something. It was trying to find a place to have its babies. I didn't like it. It was the middle of the night.
Right.
Ironically, I am a trauma survivor that would wake up to a perpetrator standing over me in my sleep. So, being woken up out of my sleep, even though it was a raccoon, it was extremely triggering, obviously. So I had like a 2x4 kind of like put in the window. So I became really afraid that someone was going to break in my house. That really stayed with me. That was a PTSD effect. Other effects would just be just like, just I couldn't be alone, and I went through that. It took me years to face my fear of being alone due to abandonment issues. So fetal position crying, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I know sometimes it's kind of hard to share those types of things, and sometimes I think it's important to share them, only so the guests understand where you were and the things that you've come from and how you have healed yourself, because that is like huge. Again, that's why I do these, because there's so many different healing modalities, so many different things that you can do to get this trauma out of your systems, which is huge. So Michael asked a question. Let me pop it up here. Has Jenn ever visited the Hudson Valley? Lots of hiking opportunities.
Not a lot. I'm not sure no, that's Finger Lakes. So I've been to Robert Treman State Park in upstate New York. I don't think it's that close. And Minnewaska is another park that's in New York. Just mostly just driving through, honestly. Even just driving through the Hudson Valley is very pretty. So mostly from probably probably on my way to Vermont.
What better place, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Um, so what advice would you give anybody that is interested in trying solo travel or hiking, or what is some advice that you would give them?
Well, before I answer that, I do want to take one step back because when you were talking about trying to remember the name of the phenomenon about trees and energy,
Yes.
it brought something up that's, I think, extremely relevant.
Okay.
And for me, animism is like when you believe that there's life energy in pretty much everything, but
Yes.
mostly, trees. And so it's like, I like to think of animism as they're just different kinds of people. A tree is just a different kind of a person. Or so so even though most people don't think that trees have feelings, like when I'm looking outside at my tree, I'm like, oh, it's a living thing. Like I care about their feelings, or maybe your animals, like your cats, your dogs, like you don't usually dispute that. But
No.
the
Nope.
reason why I think it's so relevant for trauma survivors to understand this is like, so when I step into the forest and I am surrounded by living things that for me, in my belief system, are different forms of people. These are living things that are just a different kind of a person. So when I'm receiving that love that I explained different points of our conversation, the reason why it's significant for a trauma survivor is because I'm going in from a place that I'm unlovable, and I don't know I'm unlovable. I don't know I hate myself. I don't believe that I'm worthy of love. And I don't feel safe letting anybody love me.
Right.
So, what do you do about that? It's such a dilemma, right? Like, when I went into the forest lots of times, I felt like an outcast. I felt like a feral human. So I wasn't judged there. I was safe. Like I was safe on a cellular level. I was safe on an emotional level. Nobody was going to ask me for something I couldn't give or didn't want to give.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to have to give something that I didn't want to give, but I was going to have to do it anyway. Like I was safe from a psychological standpoint. When I would go into those places, I was safe. And that helped me acclimate to human relationships. I
Oh,
was
wow.
unconditionally accepted in the forest. And slowly, as I learned to let the love in from those sources, then I was able to, reciprocate a little bit and then learn to love myself. And I think it's very important for trauma survivors to understand that for me, that's where I belonged. Like, I finally found a home where I belonged. And, I was seen, I was heard. I'm sure people in my life tried to see me, they tried to hear me, but I couldn't speak that language. I was too trained to be codependent. I was too brainwashed. So it was scary.
Very,
My inner
very.
children were freaking out. Like, you're
Yep.
going to want something from me that I can't give you,
Right. Yep.
and that works out bad for me. And the answer is just, I'm not going to let you in. And so, um, that's what I would want to share, whether it's hiking or solo traveling. Um, mostly if your listeners are interested and they receive from nature, that has been my experience, is to be able to be a tree hugger, card carrying, flag waving tree hugger. I did do like an online course with a spiritual teacher and intuitive that, it was called Earth Tenders. And I found a tribe there of people who, it's like woo woo, but like you people got me, and that brought me along a little more. Like I'm not just a weird person. There's lots of people out here who understand, that that us humans aren't like the end all be all. Like we think we are. We think we come onto this earth to dominate and we're above the animals and we're above the trees. But not everybody believes that, Native American philosophies and culture and ancient earth cultures understand that. So stuff that we repackage as white people, I don't know how to say it. Like it's like, oh, it's new. No, it's not new. Like indigenous cultures have always known this. So that's a little side note. And for solo traveling advice, I love to um, shout out to the people who supported me. Like getting a mentor, I think was very important. Somebody who was just a couple of steps ahead of me with traveling, alone. Somebody who was able to cheer me on and say, you can do it. Like I would go to a new place, I would text my friend. She's like, you got this, and that really made a difference in the beginning. Then when my trips got bigger, my first in-state or, my first like airplane solo trip, because I did some campings that I drove to, but the first airplane that I boarded was to Sedona, Arizona, which is amazing because, it's got the vortex and the healing energy. That was a really great first big solo trip because I stayed in a guest house that was a retreat center. So I felt like, and I had reached out a lot to the owner before I went, so I didn't feel like it was so scary, like my inner child needed to know, like, we're going to be safe. And I had talked to them a lot. So by the time I got there, I felt like I made a friend, and I was just staying with friends, but it was a guest house. And then I did a whole bunch of different intuitive and holistic healing things. So I was only out there for like 5 days, but I had stuff on my schedule. So it kept me engaged. I didn't feel too much downtime, just enough, but not like I was going. But it was just very freeing to be in the car. And it was like, wow, this is so different. This is so neat. I'm in a new place. And, one night, my inner child and I got ice cream. I went out and I got myself an ice cream cone and I sat there and I ate my ice cream cone. And it, like, out of all the things that I saw and did in Sedona, like getting that ice cream cone was pretty powerful.
Right. Thank you.
So, like, it's a small thing, but it's really profound when your intention is to give yourself love.
And that's a lot of what it is. It's, learning the signs, but ultimately choosing you. Mm-hmm. Choosing you and how important you truly are. And that's one of the things that I struggled with, was learning to put myself above my kids and above my husband. My husband said, bless you. Thank you, honey. He's so funny. So it was learning to put myself above all of them and going and saying, okay, that's a part of my self-care, and going and doing what I wanted. And when I would go work out, I would work out for, I don't know, like 5 or 10 minutes, but then I felt guilty. I'm like, oh, I should really be home doing this and doing that. And then it was like, but the more you do it, the more it's like, oh, I'm really putting myself first. I'm feeling amazing. And then you continue. And then I would go, and there'd be times that I would go and work out for 2 hours, but I'd sit there after I worked out, and I may sit there for an hour and say, wow, I don't want to go home yet. Like, sorry, honey, but I'd be like, oh, I really don't want to go home yet. I like it, like just sitting here. And I tease when I go to the grocery store and people will say, oh, do you want to go ahead of me? And I said, you know what? No, you just go ahead of me because I don't need to go home right now. But just joking. But in all seriousness, it is about learning to love yourself, choosing you first, putting yourself first, learning what those healthy boundaries are. Because when you learn to love yourself, you learn to accept you and all your flaws. And what are you willing to accept? And so it helps you create those boundaries. So if somebody's coming up and saying or doing things to you, that that's not right. Yeah. And that's a huge step in the right direction. That's a huge thing for trauma survivors too.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Do we have any more questions? This has been a good live. It's learning, I've, like, again, I'm always looking for different things for myself as a trauma survivor, looking for more things to do and kind of get out there and do things as well. And again, for the audience and stuff like that, I just think it's, not to repeat, but it's just really important for them to understand that it's not about traditional talk therapy. It's not about coaching. It's about getting out and moving. And that's the somatic portion of it. It's getting out and moving, and the somatics of what are you doing? And it's about aligning this and this. You have to align these two, or you're just going to be all over the place.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense to me when I learned about stuck grief. With childhood trauma, I couldn't process it. The fight, flight, freeze just went into my body. So it's frozen.
Yeah.
All those years, It's still there. The body remembers, there's a lot. I
Yep.
definitely subscribe to all of the literature and understandings around trauma being stuck in the body.
Yes. Did you read the book, The Body Keeps the Score?
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. I figured when you said that. Yes, I love that book.
Yeah.
That was I when we bring that up, because a lot of people don't know, but that was the book. So not to get so much about me in this, but my trauma, there was a lot of developmental trauma and the things that I've endured in my life. And so it really affected the brain portion of mine, more of the psychological and the brain and all the components. And so I remember reading that book, and I think it was like the second chapter, and I started realizing, oh my goodness, I really am not nuts. Like, this is the after effect of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember sitting here. This is my brain. Like, I have these aha moments. I have to laugh because I remember sitting here at this desk about 4 years later after I read that book, and it dawned on me. The body keeps the score. You mean to tell me that's what that book means? The body keeps the score, like the trauma's trapped in the body? I had no idea that's what it meant. No idea. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, talk about like being slow in the times of what it really means. And I was just like, wow. Like, so I tell everybody, if you have trauma, you really need to read that book. That it was that book there, like I said, that I finally realized the things I was experiencing, because I lost my sense of self. And when I read that book, it made me realize it wasn't me.
Right.
It was the trauma that was doing the things of this. And I've worked so hard over the last 3 years to get myself where I am today. And there's still some struggles and things that I'm working on. But I used to always say to myself, like, even my kids would even say, Mom, you were like a monster. And I was like, oh, I know. Like, I would be triggered, like, and I know what my triggers are now from using mindfulness and being mindful of when the mood swings kicked in, and when all of a sudden I could feel myself going from this calm place to all of a sudden I was this raging lunatic. And it was like I just automatically shifted into this evil person. And then it finally, once I got into trauma recovery, it was about 6-8 months maybe, I really started identifying what was triggering to me.
Yeah.
And that's using that mindfulness key.
Yeah. I kept my triggers on little index cards that I made.
Oh, did you? Oh, good.
Yeah. And over time, I had like a stack like this. But I would write on the front, what triggered me.
Okay.
And then on the back, what I'm going to do next time. So I was like really on practicing it, because when you're triggered, you can't do anything different at that moment. No, you can't. So that's just a wrap. But I was ready for next time, and I would reread it. So, because it was really an act of love and self-care to be like, okay, it was like with just centering myself and my inner child, and like, okay, because it's very upsetting to your inner children to get triggered again, because they are like, not again, it's like back there,
It does. And it does.
Taking the time to be ready and be prepared and forgive myself, like, okay, we didn't do it that time, but we're going to get another chance. Because when you're a trauma survivor and you're getting triggered, there's like always another trigger down the road, you know? So I knew I'd have practice, I'd have an opportunity to practice. And when it would come up, you know, that's when, so it was a kind of calculated way to use mindfulness, but
Yes.
the mindfulness was in slowing it all down in a cognitive level. And then, you know, so when the emotions went off the rails, because it's what, you know, triggers do, I was able to, you know, create new neural pathways and definitely
Yes.
new behaviors.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a huge thing. So let me go back for a second, and then Charles, I'll ask her your question, because it's important to tell people why, when we're triggered, what happens to our brain, because you said it yourself, like it's like your brain shuts off, and that's exactly what it does. And so, kind of technical, my people know I get technical. If you have questions, you can ask. But what ends up happening is that when you're triggered, your prefrontal cortex shuts off. And automatically, if you're under the age of 25 and you're triggered, well, your prefrontal cortex isn't developed anyway. Well, then about 25, 26, it's developed. But if you've gone through any sort of childhood trauma, it's not fully developed. So there's some impairments that happen within the prefrontal cortex. And so when you become triggered, you're literally responding on trauma cells. So your prefrontal cortex shuts off. And so that's why we kind of, I tell my husband, it's like I would spew at the mouth. Like I would just cuss and scream and holler at everything else. And then I would be like, what did I do that for? Or they'd say, exactly, my kids would say, Mom, you're a monster. And I'd say, I was. But like I wouldn't really have a recollection as far as how deep the triggering was. So I love that you used index cards to help you identify, because a lot of us, including myself, just goes, oh, well, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to keep a mental note. But what I love is that when you did that and you put it on the index card, and then on the back, you wrote what you were going to do next and give yourself a second chance. Because again, what that's doing is it's increasing your mindfulness. And even if your brain shuts off during a trigger, your hope is that it's going to pull that from probably the hippocampus where all your memories are stored. And so hopefully it would pull it from there back into your prefrontal cortex, and it would help you. So it would literally calm you down. Fight and flight would calm you down. It would calm down your fight or flight. It would calm down your fight or flight quicker, and you wouldn't stay on that trigger for that long. And so I like that. And then I like the fact that you brought up inner children. I actually wrote in the chat so people know what inner children are. We all have them, and you know, and especially trauma survivors. And so inner children are just a part of us that maybe it's a part of us that things that we missed out on. And so they come up all the time. And I have an inner child that for some reason I will be sitting here and I try to be, not that I'm a perfect Christian woman by any means, but sometimes I sit here and one of my inner children, and she's about 15, 16, she likes to cuss up a storm. And I'll just be sitting there going, I shouldn't even be doing this. And I'm like, dear God, I am so sorry. I don't even know where this is coming from. But I'll tell you, there's times that I have to release that inner child. And I don't know what she's rebelling on. And I just started doing more of the inner child, inner critic work. And so I can identify where these inner, what is my inner child trying to tell me? So I just think that's a part of my inner child rebelling.
Oh yeah, I call her my inner teen. And she's just a teenager. That's what teenagers do.
Yes.
She loves to curse. Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, okay. I'm like, yep. So I share that with my clients, and I said, I don't do it when anybody's around.
Well, you're better than me, because I'll still drop the F-bomb.
Yeah. Well, I do. You know, I try not to, but I just like to keep it real. I'm human, and there are times that things come out of my mouth, and then I'm like, where'd that come from? I'm like, whoops, okay.
Especially as trauma survivors, it's so empowering to just be authentic, right?
Yes,
like,
it is.
Isn't that what everybody wants? Everybody wants to be authentic, but it's so scary to be authentic. It's such a paradox, you know, like it's scary being, you know, your absolute real self, and like, oh, people are going to judge me. But come on, like pushing it down and all that other stuff is just people pleasing, which is ultimately codependency.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly what it goes to. Yes. This is good. So my husband wants to know, when you go camping, do you cook on an open fire?
No. I'll open a can of raviolis.
Oh, that's funny. That's all right. I always tease him and tell him I was a pioneer back in the day because I love cooking on an open fire. I've never been camping.
Okay.
I've never been camping that I know of. I don't, even as a child, I don't remember ever camping. My husband's like, we should go camping. And I was like, ooh, I don't know. Like, just the thought of it gives me the heebie jeebies.
Oh, it's not
And
for
I was like,
everybody.
no, and it's not. So I told him, I said, well, maybe you can set up the tent in our backyard and I can sleep out there. We can sleep out there and we'll see how it goes. So I was like, I don't know about this. So we'll see.
I actually have a post on my blog that says just that. It's like, just put your tent up in your backyard and don't worry about your neighbors, because what are they going to tell you? Oh, I'm spying on you. No, they're not
Right.
going to say that. Like, mind
Nope.
your business, you know. But I at my house, in the house that I had described, my kids' friends and we slept in the backyard, and it's different, but it's definitely like a nice first step. I love to sleep on the ground, on the bare earth. Like,
Yes.
it's a phenomenon that, like, I can go in, into my bed, whatever, and lay there for an hour or whatever to try to fall asleep. I could go in a tent and be out like that. I don't know what it is about, like, being out in the air and sleeping on the ground. I just and I'm not like, I can't go right to sleep. I'm not a quick sleeper.
Right.
But when I'm outside in that air, I'm right out. So that's got to mean something.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Linda said RV camping is the way I like to camp.
For sure. That's a camper van that's what I was thinking, because the tent is great, but it is a lot of work, and I'm old now, and I like to just put the bed down, and it's the best of both worlds. I love camper van camping.
Isn't that cool? And then my husband said tent camping is awesome. So I believe you. That's fine. But yeah, so I might have to try it. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful insight that you gave us this evening. And again, Jenn has her website up there as well, and can kind of go there and kind of look around at, her blog and a lot of the things that she does. And you'll be there for days, probably years, months. I don't even know, because there's so much wonderful information that she shares and stuff like that. And, a true passion of helping other trauma survivors and other people find their sense of self, find who you are when you sit out in nature, and find those peaceful and serene atmosphere that's going to give you those grounding techniques. And so we all need some sort of grounding. Does anybody else have any questions before we kind of wrap things up? Or Jenn, do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
I just wanted to share, Gina, that if there's anyone listening who felt inspired, wondered, a little bit more, or curious in any of those from what you heard tonight, I did write an ebook. It's on my site for sale, and it's called Roots and Wings, Finding Freedom Through Nature and Travel. And it goes into more detail about my trauma, and my story. But I wrote it with a blog reader in mind. It's pretty short. It's only 120 pages. I bullet pointed every strategy that I use to heal myself. There's 13. So if you do go on my blog and you're interested in what you read, and you want to see the whole story, because there's some juicy stuff in there, around my personal life and how my story ends. I'm here now. My story hasn't ended because I'm still here with you all.
Right.
But yeah, there's some twists and turns that usually capture people's imagination, and they want to hear a little bit more of how that happened with my personal story, with my personal life. So it's in the book, and like I said, it's for sale in ebook. But my goal was, if you were a reader of my blog and you were like, okay, great, but it's like all these moving parts, I put it all in one place. You know, this is exactly when it started, and I told my husband, you know, I was leaving, and so, you know, my really like my solo trips, you know, to where I am now, and because I do care, you know, how could I not? I'm a trauma survivor, you know, so I feel very strongly about wanting to help other people. This is how it worked for me.
Right. And that's a huge thing. So, and I think it is important for, if they're interested, you know, again, to, you know, I know you've shared when we did our interview, you shared a lot more. And so her story is very, very powerful. And, and if you buy it and you read it, you'll really see there's so much more. And you know, and stuff like that. And so that's why I kind of, you know, again, that's why I love doing these too, because then it kind of gives people like the just the topping, and then they're like, ooh, now we got to go a little bit more and a little bit deeper and things like that too. And so, and it helps you, you know, and stuff like that. Get the, you know, I'm a huge, nothing against men. You know, they'll probably, my husband would be like, yeah, nope, nothing against men, but I firmly believe empowering women. And because I'm one of those ones that I always had people that copied my ideas. And you know, okay, I had good ideas, that's perfectly fine, but they would always copy my ideas. And then and it was just like there was no empowering. They wanted to see you get kind of kicked to the dirt or kicked to the ground, and they didn't want to watch you succeed. And so I think that's another reason that I enjoy doing these. I mean, I've had men on here, so I mean, it's not that I wouldn't promote them as well, by any means. I'm not saying that by any means. It's just that women need that empowering support, and knowing that that there's a community of us that are supporting one another and lifting each other up and things like that, just like men have their support system of others that are lifting them up and things like that too. And so that's another reason that I do this, and is, again, so there is that support system. There's nothing on here about my business whatsoever. When I welcomed myself, it was, you know, from Rise Up. Well, obviously when I'm in the chat, they know, but there's nothing, because I want it to be about you, not so much about me. Because there's so many different things that we do. And then by meeting people, what I love is that by meeting people and doing these, I can send somebody to your website and say, here, this is what Jenn did. You know, Jenn, you know, look at all the things that she did to help herself heal and overcome the after effects of the trauma she endured. And it's about getting out in nature, because I can sit there and tell my clients all day, oh, you know what, you should do trauma-informed movements, which they could get the same effect if they did hiking, if they were out walking or doing whatever. But they'll say, oh, I don't really want to do trauma-informed movement. Well, I never thought about hiking until you just, you know, we had talked and you had mentioned it. And I was like, oh yeah, that would be a good one too. Or just getting out in nature. I never really thought about those types of things. And so that's why I love doing this and bringing this out to the public eye, because what I may not have thought of, I have guests that will bring it to the table and say, yes, this is a different modality. And so I can share what you're doing with my client and send them to you. And so that's the type of empowerment that I love. It's the networking, it's the empowerment, just to be able to help each other.
For sure. I was thinking the word community too, because
yes.
You know, being a trauma survivor, so much was taken from us. and the healing is reclaiming it and understanding that you're not alone, because come on, like, you couldn't know what I went through, and if you did, you judge me, and until I really started to embrace this as who I am and embrace my healing, and all of the people that, like, when you shine that light and make it safe, and then their voice comes out, because trauma is so isolating. You're isolated even from yourself. And that's the saddest, I think, and being able to come out, and whether it's a blog or therapist or, wherever you want to put your voice out there, it's saying, like, come on, you don't have to be alone anymore.
Right.
There's a solution. Because, honestly, I didn't believe I could be healed.
Right.
I was in my 40s, well into my 40s. What else is there? Like, I thought I was so old. I know I'm not that old. But when you've lived that way your whole life, it's just, yeah, okay. Sure.
Mm-hmm. It comes with the, so when God had me do my mental health conference, the words he spoke to me was, it's going to be you against a million. Yeah. And exactly what you just said is kind of how it came to be, that so many people don't believe that they're going to be healed. They think, oh, I'm just going to be in recovery for the rest of my life and I'm never going to heal, and da 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 da. And I'm like, that's because we are trained and conditioned to believe that. If you will start speaking life and start saying, I'm going to be healed, and you start doing things, it changes. It starts changing. It changes up here. And then not only did the words change here, but then when you start doing the physical movements, it starts changing the body.
And I would never for a second minimize how scary it is to hope. It's scary.
It is.
Like, I've been hurt so many times. Are you kidding me? I'm not trying again. Right. I'm done. Like, I have nothing left. You want me to try again? And I think that's what I was explaining with going to the forest and starting there. So, I have so much compassion and love for trauma survivors, because I know how hard it is when you've been beaten down so much. Right. From your own trauma, because that perpetrator is long gone. Now it's just in here. But it can be healed here.
It can be. And you're living proof.
Thanks for having me on. This was such a great conversation.
Oh, you are welcome. We'll have to have you on again, because it's like that's what I always say. There's so much that we could talk about. We could probably be here for like another 4 hours sitting here talking. And that's why I'm like, oh, there's just so much, that we can talk about and things like that. So if I just want to make sure that I put your website in the chat. I couldn't remember the name. I just put ebook. Linda said that was so good, and thank you.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you being here too. They're so insightful and so knowledgeable on the things, and you're such an inspiration, not only to me but to the trauma community, and just that light for the people that are like, I can't be healed. And I don't know how to be healed. And you're just living proof that you can. And so thank you for that. And, thank you for coming on and just kind of sharing. That's what it's all about. So I love it. Anything else? Does anybody else have anything before we head on out of here? And anything else for Jenn? Anything else for me? That's funny. We have to tell her I said thank you. So we will be back next week. We will next week, 8 p.m. Eastern. So set your reminders, your notifications, subscribe, like, and do all of that good jazz that you have to do, whatever you have to do to, I always say, oh, thumbs up, like, subscribe, whatever you have to do. I kind of learned how to do this. I kind of do this by the seat of my pants, and I was like, whoop, okay. Sometimes my mind gets off on a tangent, and I'm like, yep, I don't have my calendar, and I'm not going to look, but I believe next week is, it's a trauma survivor that has had cancer 3 times and how she has used somatics and breath work. And that's how she kind of healed a lot of the things that she was going through and working with cancer survivors as well. So that is next week at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here. And Scott said, awesome ladies. So thank you, Scott. Feel free. Any questions? You can always leave them. Actually, I was going to say you can leave them in the chat, but I forgot that once I end the live stream, you actually can't. And Scott said, thank you for sharing, Jen.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
You are more than welcome. It's been a pleasure. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, you can feel free to go back into the live once it uploads into YouTube, and you can ask any questions. And if Jen, if she sees them, she can answer them, or I can reach out to her and tell her that there was other questions and things like that. Again, Jen's website is jennfisherbooks.com. Get on there, get her ebook. Learn some more about Jen. She goes more in depth on her story. She's just a phenomenal human. It's been a pleasure having you, Jen. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you next week.